Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to RSL 2016 Season 1, Group B of the round of 32. It's a big old mouthful, but essentially what that means is we're going to have Pili, Koshkii, Zergwave, and most importantly, Tefl playing tonight. That is a four-man group. Protoss, Terran, and two Zergs. I'm DrennoC, joined by the lovely Koshkii, and how do you feel about this? These are some great players, and RSL really this season has lined up some phenomenal talent to play.
I agree. I'm really looking forward to some of these games. Pili, as we know, very strong, but Zergwave, Kawaii, and Tefl, I mean, these are all names that when you hear them, you're like, oh, that's a good player. Then you hear the next one, you're like, oh, that's a good player too. So I think we're in for some really good games tonight.
Yeah, I'm especially excited. We're going to be opening up with Pili versus Tefl. That is a PvZ on Dusk Towers for our very first game. Of course, I'm very curious to see how people are playing out our new changes to the maps. I believe it was last weekly, we were talking about Lairlac Crest, Freon Terraces. I think those are the only ones with changes. Oh, and Central Protocol. Hopefully, we will see them pop up here and there through the series, but Dusk Towers, through almost the entirety of Legacy of the Void, has been the go-to map.
Yeah, and it is our first map here tonight. Doesn't surprise me, but I wouldn't be surprised also to see those other maps pop up. I've been seeing more and more Prion Terraces lately. I think players are starting to develop their own strategies for that, especially with the new change. You know, they might have some more tricks up their sleeves. We'll see. I have a feeling, though, that we're going to see some of these cool new changes on the maps, though, tonight.
It'll be really cool to watch, but these players, of course, you all want to know what they are fighting for, what they will be jousting it out on each map. In first place for RSL 2016 Season 1 will be $300 plus 300 OSC points, which of course contribute into the OSC Championship Series groups. And I believe there's between $5,000 to $10,000, at least with the grand finals for OSC. If you wanna check that out, whatever the players are, if they qualify, Pili's pretty high in it because we're loading into game one of this best of three, starting off Pili versus Tefl.
Yep. So here we go. Our first map, Dusk Towers, as we said before, PvZ. It's exciting. PvZ, my favorite matchup. So can't wait to see how this one goes.
I'll break the fourth wall pretty early on. You're laughing, man. It didn't stop, and I was like, no, what have I done? We have, of course, our lovely observer, Hawkeye, who's been laughing at some things. I'm really excited to watch this, not only because I know Pili pretty well, but also because I believe Pili is seeded into this from the previous season, or at least not from the qualifiers, from one of the earlier seasons, playing really well. Or actually, was invited, I think. Yep, maybe. Something akin to that. But either way, he has played in the RSL many a time before, but here we are on Dusk Towers. In the bottom left-hand corner, it is the green Zerg player, Tefl.
And spawning in the top right, it is our blue Protoss from Storm Gaming. It is Pili.
And these colors are vibrant with WCS Gameheart, I believe, is the current setting. I just noticed that right off the bat. I was like, wow, that green and that blue is so deep. It's great.
I was noticing that too. I'm like, did I change my settings? And then you mentioned that. I'm like, oh, that's right. That's what's going on.
Same
Looks like we are
exact
going
train
to
of thought
hatch.
for me.
Looks like we are going to have a hatch. Maybe hatch gas pool. Definitely hatch before pool here from Tefl. It's a pretty standard opener for Pili as well. Looks like it might actually... I'm curious what Tefl's next move here might be. It might even be another hatchery.
On Dusk Towers, that 3 hatch before pool is pretty darn common. You have one in the back that's easily defendable, and whether you go Ling Baneling or Roach one earlier on, it's not too hard to defend. There's one ramp, one big way to get in. It may be big, but one thing I'd be worried about with this is Pili, he is a very aggressive player, whether it be with Blink Stalkers or Adepts. You do have to be kind of wary about that. Yet in Legacy of the Void, of course, it's pretty hard to punish the 3 hatch before pool. I don't think really, unless you're proxying, you can truly punish it. and punish your opponent for it. But in that case, you were starting off by doing that, so you can't just make the decision to punish it on the fly.
Yeah, but as you said, Pili is very strong with the harass. I'm curious to see what he does, especially once he realizes this is indeed a 3-hatch before pool. And there are, 2 base builds. They're still strong on this map, trust me on that. So I'm curious if he is going to go more of a 2 base route, or if he is going to gear up for a macro game. But knowing Pili, it would not surprise me to see some very strong 2 base play.
Pili opening up with a gate cyber nexus, meaning that he can't quite throw down that quick 2-gate. Every once in a while, you will see a nexus first into 2-gate or 2-gate right off the bat, and that will allow you to maybe get a little bit of damage done, head over to the other side of the map, and kill some stuff. But for now, he's just going to be able to push back this Overlord. Tefl has to head on out of there, but Tefl does identify, cool, at least I know that you're not going early gate a lot of that. But his next step is, of course, seeing Stargate Robotics Facility. And it's going to be robotics for Pili.
That makes me excited. And the Twilight Council behind this, there is an Adept in production. I am wondering if this will be an Adept drop, if this will be more of an all-in with Immortals. It's still a little early to say. We'll see what Pili makes out of that Robo. There's a lot of potential with that Robo.
Adepts may have been nerfed slightly in the other matchups, but still in PvZ, they are incredibly good at sniping drones. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Warp Prism into Resonating Glaives, something very common on this map to see out of Protoss. And for now with Zerg, Tefl, yes, it was a 3-hatch before pool. Cool, we've gotten out of that, and now it's where does he move on from there? Is it Heavy Queen to defend? Something you see a little bit more in TvZ. For now, really the only inclination of what he's doing is adding on one more gas in his natural. Often the main defense is simply a Roach Warren, doesn't cost too much, but looks like he's going to be adding on his extra gas now and banking up to what I believe will most likely be a Roach Ravager defense.
Yeah, behind this, Pili is getting a Dark Shrine. He is also getting Resonating Glaive, so he is going to be more heavy Adepts. Now, Adepts were, they were nerfed a little bit, but that does not mean they are not still strong, especially with that upgrade. This attack from Pili could prove to be pretty deadly, especially with the DT follow-up, because not only do you have DTs, but you also have possible Archons, which can really shred Zerg units.
Oh, looks like the Lings of Tefl moving in will spot that 3rd base going down right as about it was going to happen. Pylon is going to be killed, and at the same time, the probe is killed. Ling's going to head up into the main, but there will be one Adept to defend. Ooh, looks like the Lings will commit to it. The Mothership Core is going to come on over in and push this back. So overall, Tefl at least denies the 3rd base for a little while longer, knows that's where Pili is going for. As you mentioned earlier, Koshkii, okay, maybe Pili goes for the 2-base play, but now at least Tefl is identified you're not doing that. Now though, Tefl, he's got to worry about not only DTs, but I've seen Pili do this build and then in a couple sentries add in them. Not only having DTs, but then force fielding off the ramps. You just negate all defenses, period, for the Zerg.
Yeah, and that would be pretty devastating right now for Tefl is, there's not too many defenses on the map, and those that are all kind of clustered at the 3rd.
We will see. 1 Spore is going to be here, but 3 DTs are going to try to surround it. Drone's in a beautiful position, won't allow one of the DTs to attack the Spore, but eventually it still will go down. 2 DTs survive out of that attack. We do have an Overseer on the way for Tefl, but at the same time, in the natural base of Tefl, got to worry about now there's just Adepts, and the beauty of this attack is just kind of the speckling here, there, everywhere, just trying to pull the Zerg apart, and we'll see how many kills so far, 10 for Pili, but he's also screwed up the overall economy. Tefl would much rather be building drones right here. Instead, he's going to be forced to make Hydras and Roaches and may actually be forced to go over on the other side of the map and attack.
Yeah, and Pili's still doing a little bit of harass there with the Adepts. Behind this, Pili is getting Immortals. He's getting Charge. So he is setting himself up for a pretty strong army going into the mid-game.
Pili's got his 3rd Nexus up and a couple pylons. He's also semi-walled off that 3rd base to get ready for a big flood, something like that. But for now, Tefl is just being very careful back at home. He's not going to send any units out of position. Pulls his entire army towards the 3rd. Maybe the Adepts could dive into the natural, but just repositions them and hold commands them in the middle. Those Roaches.
Yeah, and, quite a bit of damage has been done now to Tefl just with, having to pull some of the drones. A few spores were lost, a few drones also lost to the to the Dark Templar, but nothing has really been done to Pili Pili here. A third Nexus was prevented from going down for a little bit, but that was basically the worst of it.
Relatively even worker-wise, both these players, 66 to 63 workers. Pili Pili, though, does have a very slight economic lead in this position. As you said, he has not quite lost as much, and Devil's got to really start looking at his priorities. Yes, he can throw everything back at home to defend versus this Warp Prism, but he's got a fourth hatch on the way. Well, Pili Pili almost could take a fourth Nexus if he wished to. He doesn't have a lot of army at home, but Tefl really needs to start thinking about, how am I going to punish you for this? How am I going to actually do anything about this? And for now, he's just macroing up into more Hydras and hopefully eventually Lurkers.
Yeah, we do have the Lurker Den being made now. And this is going to be a big deal. Lurkers are not easy for Protoss to deal with. However, surprisingly, I know it sounds weird, but Charge Lad Archon Immortal doesn't do too bad against Lurkers if you can micro okay.
Generally, the Charge Lots can get right on top of those Lurkers, and unlike Brood War, you can't one Storm, or I think it's one or two Storm, I believe it's one Storm in Brood War to get rid of those Lurkers, but unlike that, Storms won't be quite as good if we see any Storms every once in a while at Pili Pili. Generally, though, the Charge Lots can get straight on top of Lurkers, take them out. Tefl is moving out, and no Lurkers quite yet. The Lurker Den will be done by the time about he gets to Pili Pili's side of the map, but with Charge Lots, easily Pili Pili can rush forward and try to engage her. Now we have 4 High Templars, pardon me, 4 Archons on the way, and Pili Pili's almost got an army to go 1-for-1 with this Roach Hydra force if the Roach Hydra aren't careful and don't engage directly.
Yeah, Tefl needs to be very careful with his army. Pili knows that it's moving forward. Might be able to force a cancel on the Nexus, but it looks like Pili is getting into a pretty good position, so that's not going to happen.
Pili Pili has 4 Archons, 4 Immortals. It's an incredibly potent hole-punching force, and it looks like Tefl's going to fall back onto, 11 Lurkers. So many Lurkers. Pili Pili sees maybe an opportunity. His Observer earlier did die, so just a lucky guess on his part. Pushes forward. There's the prime opportunity. Either I move out and you're out of position, or you're morphing in a ton of Lurkers. Lurkers are going to burrow down. The Immortals are right on top of them. Zealots are engaging them, but there's still a lot of Lurkers right here. At the same time, at the right-hand side, a huge concave of Tefl's main forces. Pili Pili is getting sectioned off, pushed back in. Looks like an Immortal and a Stalker survives. Couple Zealots are being morphed in to take some damage, but the main brunt of Pili Pili's army, the Stalker, or pardon me, the Archon and the Immortals have been taken out. He can make a big warp in, but he's almost got nothing.
Yeah, Tefl is just moving forward now at the perfect time. He realizes that Pili, as you said, has nothing and is just going in now for the kill. I mean, there's an Immortal, there's a couple Immortals out, but there's just so much here now for Tefl.
Man, probes are being pulled in that mineral line to attempt to do something. A micro of 1 Immortal, but that's not going to be enough. GG! Pili Pili sees a great opportunity to attack the main army of Tefl, put it back before the Lurkers morphing in, but it's just a little bit too late. Lurkers morph on in, and you gotta remember that fight. The Immortals, the Zealots, everything was focusing the Lurkers, allowing 20-ish Roaches, 20-ish Hydras to say, okay, cool, I'll target you down, no damage to us, and completely obliterates the army. A great positional feat by Tefl.
Yeah, it looked pretty scary there for Tefl for a second, just as those Lurkers were finishing though, but they finished just in time and made a huge difference.
GG, well played, but that was only game 1 of a best of 3. We have 2 more games possibly on the way, and overall, this is, of course, a 4-man bracket, so I believe we'll have everything like winner's match, etc. Right, Hawkeye? Okay, cool. We will have these play. The winner of this will move on to the winner's match, who will face the winner between X-Kawaiian and Zergwave, etc. into the loser's match, then into, of course, like the Lazarus, whatever you want to call the final match. So there's still a lot of games to come. Game 1, though, as I said, went to Tefl, and man, even though it was kind of back and forth a little bit, I felt like Tefl really just dominated well and said, okay, I'm going to pull back, make some Lurkers, and I'm going for it. He had a great game plan.
He definitely planned to hit right as that Lurker Den was finishing, and that seems like a pretty strong time to hit. He realizes that he can't just let Pili Pili sit back and macro up, so I think that was a pretty smart move from Tefl.
Great move for him. Great build overall from Pili Pili too earlier on with the DT Adept, and those Adepts have Resonating Glaives. Overall, it's just potent, slaughtering everything if they can. And to be quite frank, Tefl defended incredibly well. Only lost 13 drones, man. I've literally just seen the entire game be lost right there. Even though the Zerg has Spores, even though they have Overseers, they can't deal with DTs in one base, Adepts in another, and then one DT at another base. It's just everywhere, and they can't quite deal with it.
Yeah, it was almost like you could see Tefl, like, just not panicking in that moment. He handled it very well.